Amen. Recording? Yeah. Okay. Okay, Erev Tov, everyone. I see even the shul's gone dressed up for Purim. Okay. So let's talk a little bit about Tanit Esther, because Tanit Esther is in 2 days' time. The truth is that Tanit Esther, everybody agrees, is certainly different to the other fast days. The other fast days that we have, particularly the 4 Taniyot of the Churban, right? That's Rabbi Tevet, Yudzayin B'Tammuz, Tisha B'Av, Som Gedalia. These are all days of tragedy. These are all days of mourning. And there's a certain character to the day that is associated along with just fasting. Tanit Esther is different in that sense. Difference of opinion exactly how different, but this is not a Tanit of mourning as such. There's even an expression that we find in some of the Rishonim that say this is a Tanit shel Simcha, which is quite interesting. We'll see there's a number of nafkaminot that come out of that as well. But the first question is, why is it called Tanit Esther? What are we actually commemorating, and why are we fasting the day before Purim or the day before we read the Megillah? Right, as we've already observed this year, for those of us in Yerushalayim, which is everyone here, it's a little bit different. For the rest of the world, you have Tanit Esther, and then you don't break the fast until after you've heard the Megillah. Normally, for us in Yerushalayim, we have Tanit Esther, we break the fast, and then the next day we hear the Megillah. Okay, so this year we're like everybody else, where we have the Megillah at the end of the fast. But why is it Tanit Esther? So many people think, and it's not without basis, this is found in some of our sources, in Machzor Vitri, in Shibbolei Aleket and Orchat Chaim, I should say, that say that why do we have the fast called Tanit Esther? And it makes a lot of sense if the name of the fast is Tanit Esther, because we know that Esther had a fast, right? She fasted before going in to be with to meet the king, fasted for 3 days, right? The whole famous conversation between Mordechai and Esther, and that fast, and maybe it's in commemoration of that fast, right? The pasuk in Esther Dalet Tetzayin says, "V'tzumu alai v'al tuchlu v'al tishtu shlosha yamim, laila v'yom, gam ani v'na'avotai atzum ken." So Esther says to Mordechai, says to the Jewish people, we're all going to fast for 3 days, and hopefully that will help change the Gzerah in Shamayim. So that would very much explain why it's called Tanit Esther. What that doesn't explain is why we would do it now. First of all, there are those who say that just like they fasted for 3 days, that there was, apparently in certain places, there was a custom to fast for 3 days as well, not in a row, but 3 days separately after Purim, to have, similar to what we have Tanit Bahab on a Monday, Thursday, Monday, that there is brought down such a custom to fast for 3 days. Afterwards, we don't do that. But of course, when was this fast? When did it take place? And this is in between the time and the different Mishtaot, which Esther invited Achashverosh and Haman, and all of that took place in Nisan, took place on Pesach. It's an amazing thing when you think about it, that this whole story is taking place. It's on the Yom Tov of Pesach itself. Mordechai being led through the town with on the Sus, Haman bringing him through that's on Yom Tov. Right? And we can imagine what the reaction was from the Jews at the time. Right? Many people, Rabbi Wein spoke about this, and we mentioned in yesterday's share as well. At the end of the Megillah, Mordechai, it says Mordechai is Ratzoy lerovechav. Right? Most people were happy with him. You just saved the Jewish people. Most people are happy with you. So one of the reasons is because at the beginning, when it says Mordechai lo yichrav v'lo yishtachaveh, right? Mordechai won't bow down. And we know that there were people who were saying, you could have found all the halachic reasons in the world. You could have said, Mordechai, you're putting us in trouble. Just go and just bow down to Haman, or don't be such a nudnik. Right? That's what they said to him. So those same people, the Jewish people, were complaining that Mordechai was the one who got us into this mess. Right? He is parading around on Pesach. We're all fasting, and he's parading around town in the middle of Yom Tov on a horse. What's he doing? What's he doing? You can imagine imagine what the papers had to say. Imagine what the Pashkavilim said about him. Okay, but in any event, the point is that fast that took place in Nisan. So we know we can't fast in Nisan, and also if we were to have the fast in Nisan or at a closer time to when it was, well, then it would have nothing to do with. Seemingly have nothing to do with Purim. It took place on Pesach, but we want to remember what happened in the time of Purim. So therefore, there are those who say that this really is a commemoration of that fast of Esther. It's mentioned in Megillat Esther. It's associated with the story of Purim. The story took place over 13 years, right? So we can find things that happened anytime. And And that is why we fast just before Purim to commemorate that. The Chayei Adam writes something interesting. He's brought in the Mishnah Berurah, and he says, sorry, that's connected. That's connected to the next reason. So that's the first reason in terms of that it's the commemoration of the fast of Esther. Okay. The second reason, which is maybe the first reason which is brought as to why we have the fast, because there are those who say, hang on a second, the fast of Esther was in Nisan, that was around Pesach time. Doesn't make sense that we are fasting the day before Purim to commemorate something that happened the day of Pesach. And therefore they say something else. So Rav Achai Gaon writes in the Sheiltot, says like this. That's from the Mishnah. Okay, the Mishnah, the first Mishnah in Masechet Megillah tells us we have these different days for different types of cities when they read the Megillah. Aval Ta'anit, he says, Ben Krachin, Ben Kfalim, Ben Ayalot, whether you're a walled city, a non-walled city, whatever, everybody has the Ta'anit on the same day. That's on Yud Gimel, whenever you're reading the Megillah. Why? Kulan mitanim ב-13 באדר, דאמר שמו ברבי יצחק 13 זמן קהילה לכל היא. שנאמר הושע יהודים אשר במדינות המלך נקהלו ועמוד על נפשם ביום 13 לחודש אדר, מהי קהילה יום תענית. So we find this expression throughout Chazal as well. Yom Yud Gimel is called Zman Kehila Lakol. That is the day of gathering together. Everybody gathered together on Yud Gimel. What is the gathering together that took place? So based on the Megillah, he says, the Pasuk says, that all the Jews in all the different Medinot HaMelech, Nikhalu v'amod anavsham b'yom 13 lechodesh Adar. Everybody got together on the 13th of Adar to fight for their lives. Right? There were those who rested on the 14th, those who rested only on the 15th. But that was the day everyone got together. But more than that, so there, that's in the Megillah, it's talking about in the sense of milchama, of going out to war. But he says, "My keilah yom ta'anit," that there is a fast day. We find that there is a fast, there is a yom ta'anit that is associated. Before you're going to go out to war, you want to have as many spiritual merits as you can. Obviously, you have to go out and fight, and you have to pick up the weapons, and you have to do what you need to do. But you want to have the spiritual merits as well, and therefore there was the custom was to gather together and fast. The Rabbeinu Tam writes like this. He says, "Man kila ala kolhi." What do we mean when we say this time of gathering? Shakol mitasvin ta'anit Esther. Everybody gathers together nowadays for Ta'anit Esther and the people from the villages, and everybody comes together. It says slichot, tachanunim, etc. Lefi shebo nikalu lamod al nafsham v'yusvachin rachamim. That was the day on which we had the milchama. That was the day the war took place, and that was the day we gathered together to fast as well. Says Rabbeinu Tam, this is not the only place we find as well when Moshe Rabbeinu, really Yeshua, is fighting against Amalek, that there we have a fast as well. Okay, there it says that it was Moshe, Aaron, and Hur who were standing, and Aaron and Hur were supporting Moshe's hands. Over there it says maybe just they were fasting, or everybody was fasting. But okay, so that's the idea that it's connected to the war, and that is the gathering together on Yud Gimel Be'adar. So that makes sense as to why this is the day. The question based on that is, in why is it called Ta'anit Esther? Okay, Megillat Esther, it's a generic name for Purim. Why don't we call it Ta'anit Purim or whatever it is? So here the Chayei Adam gives his explanation. This is brought by the Mishnah Berurah as well. And he says like this. He says, it's called Ta'anit Esther kedei lizkor she'Hashem yitbarach ro'eh v'shomea kol ish b'eit tzarato. To remember that Hashem hears and sees, and He's with everybody in their time of trouble, just like when Esther was in a time of tzara, and she came and fasted and called out to Hashem, so too we are in a time of tzara, and the same applies to us. When one fasts and returns to Hashem with all of his heart, just as it was in those days. So those are the two main reasons. There is a third reason that's brought in a very interesting sefer called the Magid Meisharim. The Magid Meisharim was the Beit Yosef had a Magid who came down from Shamayim and would learn with him, and he told him the following thing. He says, he writes Rav Yosef Karo. He says, "Deo soda ta'anit shemitanin b'Yud Gimel Be'adar ulachnia kocho shel Yetzer Hara milastin." It's in order to subjugate the Yetzer Hara before we come to Purim. V'lorot ksheYisrael smechim v'shotim b'yamim elu. These are the days Purim, days of Simcha, days of eating, days of drinking, etc. So that it shouldn't go overboard. In order to show, right, we come together and we eat and we have mishte and simcha, you might think it's just to fulfill physical urges and whatever it is, but we show no, it's more than that. This is part of avodat Hashem. And therefore, we have the fast, which comes before Purim, to get us into the proper mindset, to get us into the adequate preparation for Purim, to remember what it's all about and why we are doing it. So those are the three reasons why we have Tanit Esther. Either it is a commemoration of the Tanit that would be when going out to war, as took place in the time of Purim, and that's appropriate for the day of Yud Gimel Be'adar, or it's a commemoration of the fast of Esther, which is appropriate for the name, but that would have been more appropriate. The time of that was in Nisan, but nonetheless, we want it to be adjacent to Purim itself, or it is really lashlim, to complement, to complete the preparation for Purim, and that it's a day that has the potential to become a little bit frivolous, to get a little bit over the top, and we need to remind ourselves exactly what it's about as well. So I mentioned just quickly that the Kolbo and others refer to this fast as a Tanit Shel Simcha. As we've seen, it's a day of commemoration, it's not a day of mourning in that sense. And therefore, there are a number of nafkamina which come out. According to this, the night of Tanit Esther, one would be allowed to get married. On the other fast days, we would not have chatunot and things like that. There's also a question about listening to music. Is it appropriate to listen to music on fast days? Certainly the night before. Rav Zilberstein has a question in Chashukei Chemet. He says there's no problem to listen to music on the night of Tanit Esther. It's not a day of mourning. A chatan and kala who are in the week of Sheva Brachot would not fast on Tanit Esther. And balei brit, if you have a brit milah on the day of Tanit Esther, also the balei brit, so the father, the mother, the sandak, etc., would be patur from the fast in that case. Rabbi Hanania ben Akash Omer, Tzakadosh Baruch Hu lezakot Yisrael, lefichach haba lהם Torah mitzvot.